Hello, this is Jason Dean at Film Fanatic headquarters. So, hope everyone's doing good. Really excited about today's show. I have talked about in the past that one of my favorite things to do with this channel is to do interview segments, and it's been a while since I've done any. It's sometimes tough with coordinating schedules and getting all those things together. But really honored and really excited to have Matt Eros on the channel today. He's a Maine local filmmaker, pretty fabulous. And his most recent movie, Death Molester Barn of Blood, is pretty outrageous to say the least. He sent me a advanced screening for this amazing film, um, probably about a month or two ago, and I'm excited to talk about and eventually do a review for this movie. Waiting for the right time, and then also coming up, the big thing is the Maine Underground Film Festival that's going to be taking place on April 25th, which is the big thing, and that's going to be the premiere for this vile and disgusting and amazing film. So, Matt,
Yes.
thanks for coming on board here.
Happy to do it. Absolutely.
So, yeah, and just mentioning some of these other all these other projects that you've been doing, the Slim Duffy show, which is like a I don't know the best way to. I mean, we'll get into all of these things, but the Slim Duffy show, I kind of think of it as like a almost like a skit comedy show ish kind of a thing. Um, that's been like an ongoing series
Mm-hmm.
for a while, and of course, Battle Legends: The Legend of Battle Master, which was a pretty popular movie, which came out a few years ago. So, yeah, so I, for me personally, like I really gravitate towards, I love big budget films, and I go to the movies fairly often, and I like big Hollywood blockbuster films, but I tend to always you know on my own time and when I'm home, and even as a big collector of physical media, I'm really into grindhouse movies, exploitation movies, and one of the things that I love about those movies so much is with and again it sometimes puts me in conflict a little bit with Hollywood movies is I love that there's a levity to a lot of the grindhouse movies. I think a lot of the directors are not they can laugh at themselves. They're not taking some things so seriously as sometimes as Hollywood films can come across,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of the things that really stood out for my experience of seeing Death Molester is I mean, it definitely pushes the envelope, and push and really goes to places that where it's kind of shocking, but there's so much comedy. I remember when you sent me the trailer for a couple of months ago. A lot of the times, I'm not a big fan of trailers, especially in this day and age, because they reveal too many
They show
things.
you the entire movie in, yeah,
Yeah,
2 minutes.
literally, and or what happens is uh, the trailer is just not quite as exciting or as isn't actually as good as the actual. The film itself isn't quite as
Yeah.
good as the actual
I've
trailer.
seen it go both ways with that, where you see a trailer, it looks like it's going to be a great movie, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not, and then vice versa. It's that's a really hard coming up with a really good, captivating trailer is like that's way harder than a lot of people think.
And when I saw your trailer, I was kind of beside myself. I'm like, oh wow, okay, they're gonna go there. And then when I finally saw the movie, it like delivered that and then some.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that happens to me a lot when I'm into a film, and especially if it's like the first time I've seen it, I will maybe after 35 minutes or so or 40 minutes into the movie, sometimes I'll pause the movie, especially, and this is if I'm at home, and I'll like have to like pause the film and like let it process for a minute, and then maybe like do some kind of errand in my house, and then come back to it, and then go from there, because I'm just like I get too lost. I get so lost into the film, and sometimes it's because it's like wow, it's like shocking where certain films will go, or the how surreal they might get, or how strange they get. And for me, that's a telltale sign that I'm really enjoying the experience, and that happened to me about probably 2 or 3 times. So I was like, okay,
That's
all right, it's on. So I was just so curious about your influence. I was looking, uh, finding out some checking out some things about you online, and they I guess George Romero played a real big part
yeah,
for your early years.
certainly early on. I mean, I saw Day of the Dead. That was the first of the zombie trilogy.
Sure.
Um, I was like, I don't know, in seventh grade, and it was one of those things where it came on later at 11, 12 at night, and then it came on again at like 3 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
So I stayed
Mm-hmm.
up all night and watched it twice, and like I had never seen movies like that to that point, and so I was at that age.
So you're probably
Just
like 9 or 8, 8 or 9,
well,
10 years
yeah,
old.
like 11 or 12, I think. Like right at that age where you start to kind of get into whatever it is you're going to really be into,
Mm-hmm. Sure.
for life kind of
Sure.
a thing. So that movie was really transformative in that way. And then a few months after that, me and a friend of mine, we had really wanted to go see. This is when Jackass the movie was first in
Okay.
theaters,
Yep.
and we were 13 or whatever, and couldn't go by ourselves. So I don't remember which one of us said it, but one of us would like mention like we should make our own movie, and like because my dad had one of those big VHS camcorders,
Okay.
and so I got all excited like yeah we should make a zombie movie because of the
Mm.
I was trying to when you find a movie then you're like trying to show all your friends obsessively and you can't understand why they don't like it as much as you do.
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
like isn't this
Exactly.
amazing?
You don't. What?
But we both
That's
were
not
like
good?
really into Resident Evil too. We were
Okay.
playing a lot of that, so he was like, "Yeah," like we were both into the genre. So we shot this movie and just didn't have just kind of made it up as we're going. And it's a zombie movie, and we're the only two people in it, so we play all the zombies too, right?
Mhm.
And we ended up breaking my dad's camera, like at some point, so we didn't finish the movie.
Mhm.
And then at some point, I had ended up taping over the movie. Because, at that age, you're not thinking of, like, this is something I should probably hold on to, my first film.
Mhm.
And I taped over it with one of those, like, those awful, like, Cinemax softcore movies. You remember those?
Like a hotel.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Good
Like,
stuff.
the worst type of porno you could do, right?
Yep.
And a few months after that, my buddy's like, "Hey, whatever happened to that movie that we made?" I'm like, "Oh, let me tell you." I had to kind of come clean, but it was like immediately we were like, "Well, we didn't, let's remake it because we didn't have a script and we didn't know anything about what we were doing, and we didn't at that point either. But being in 8th grade, but that was the first time I ever like." The whole process of doing it, like writing a script,
She actually
planning
wrote
it
a
out.
script at that age. Like
Yeah.
trying to. Wow, that's
Like,
wild.
okay, let's take that idea and actually like make it more coherent. And so that was the process that, like, I really enjoy. I still remember like the excitement of like writing it and thinking about like, oh, this is how we're gonna shoot this scene and how and like so I just really fell in love with that process, the whole thing, writing it, making it, editing it. And at that time, like, I didn't know how to edit on a computer. Like, I had this is like early 2000s, so it was like before it was like super easy to do. And I used to, I would take what we shot, put it on a VHS tape, play it on my TV, film the TV
Wow.
with my camera, and I'd have my stereo in the background, and I'd turn when I wanted there to be music. And you can see my reflection in the TV screen, like
Wow. Okay.
turning the knob. And I had like, I think for the longest time, I had like 2 soundtracks. I had Day of the Dead soundtrack, and I had the 28 Days Later
Okay.
soundtrack. So for the first like few years I made movies, I just took the music from those movies and put it in my own, and
Dude,
eventually figured out like how to do it on the computer. And I was like, this is
Do these
so much
tapes
better.
still exist somewhere? Do you still have the?
I do have most of my stuff. Yeah, I've got a lot of those early ones. Not the first one. Silly me. I have the first like couple minutes of it. The rest of it's gone.
Hmm.
But yeah, I've actually been pretty good about um, archiving like most of my stuff, even the stuff from like way back. I was I hung on to the tapes and I digitized a lot of that stuff
Hmm.
at some point. So not all of it's very. It doesn't have the greatest replay value, obviously, but when you're it's all practice for later on.
Have you? I don't know. Like, I mean, I guess sticking with the tape or VHS thing for a minute or two, but like with this kind of new, I don't know, resurgence or comeback for with VHS. Have you thought about, I don't know, bringing that stuff back and making it public or showing? Because
Yeah,
there's more of a there's like this weird demand for it
a
now
lot
for
of that
VHS.
stuff. A lot of that stuff has ended up, um, like in the Slim Duffy show.
Mm-hmm.
Like because there's a lot of scenes of Slim like watching TV and like watching
Mm-hmm.
like awful movies, and so I've like taken a little bit of that. And in the new movie, Death Molesters, Barn of Blood, there's one of my early zombie films is on the TV, like a trailer for it.
Hmm. Okay.
Um, and like a few years back, I had the idea to like there was some of the movies I made I still had the raw footage. A lot of it I don't, but a few of those movies I had the raw footage, so I like re-edited them and specifically made them like really like cringy, and like I took the worst takes and like the worst acting bits and like constructed these new little movies together out of them because they were they're again you're in high school, middle school, you're not making great films at that age.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Sure.
just trying to figure out how to use how to set up a shot and how to do all that stuff. You really I had no idea what I was doing for a long time. So
Just curious too. Like besides, I mean, yeah, I mean George Romero. I mean, it's hard to anybody into horror in general. It would be hard pressed to not find somebody who is not in love with his work. I mean, but I'm just curious, like, were there other films or directors during that time that really like got your juices going, got you really excited about horror, or
mhm.
or like cult movies and things like that.
Yeah, it was. I mean, definitely Romero was where it started, and
Mm-hmm.
then I dove into all of the other classic '70s and '80s stuff. So like, definitely John Carpenter
Mm-hmm.
went through all of those movies, and Wes Craven, of course, and then started getting into some of the more obscure foreign stuff. So like Lucio Fulci's movies,
Yeah, yeah.
and like those, that was another thing where watching Zombie for the first time
Mm-hmm.
and just being like, this is, I can't believe that this exists. Like
Exactly.
the amount of gore and the extreme close-ups on gore where it's just like intentionally trying to make you sick kind of
Mm-hmm.
movie. Argento, that stuff. Asian, the Japanese horror. Um, and then eventually, getting a little older and then getting into different genres and starting to actually watch other, getting into like Scorsese's movies and
Sure.
Tarantino. And then, for the first few years I made movies, it was just all horror movies. It was either like zombie stuff or slasher stuff. And then eventually, after seeing like Goodfellas and Casino,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, oh, I could maybe do some like drug crime related
Gangster movie or something. Right?
Yeah, so, and kind of doing a little bit of different stuff once as I got into other genres, taking little bits of whatever I was into at whatever age.
Mm-hmm. Um, one one of the things too with like, where, well, I remember seeing an interview a few years ago with Joe Bob Briggs, of course, and one of the greatest voices for for exploitation movies and grindhouse movies, and that drive-in, those drive-in periods of time in the 70s and 80s that are so a thing of the past. I I remember a couple of months before I saw this interview with Joe Bob Briggs. I was talking to somebody about like if we had an access like independently of each other. Like I was talking to a friend like what would you do if you had a time machine? Like what would be the first place you would go? And I remember saying the first place that I thought about if I had a time machine would be to go back to 42nd Street in like 1974
Oh yeah,
or
yeah,
1974 through like 84 and be able to experience that just completely insane time, like
yeah.
going to
Midnight movies.
experience that.
Yeah.
But anyway, Joe Bob Briggs had said in this interview where he was like saying, um, with like technology and everything now, obviously, I mean, with music, because I know you do music as well. With music, being able to do a lot of things independently and with cameras being relatively inexpensive, buying home recording equipment, learning how to like, make your own art and through the use of social media, getting your own little piece of the pie independently. But he was kind of talking about this interview, or in this interview, about he felt like from the 70s or late 60s 70s, and the 70s is kind of that's like the decade I always go back to, even though I watch a lot of new stuff. But he was saying like in the 70s he felt, and in the 80s there was more movies coming out compared to now. But he said he felt like it's a weird, I don't know, situation or dilemma where he felt, which he didn't really understand, because with technology now, in the digital age, it's in a lot of ways a lot cheaper to make movies, or easier.
Yes.
I don't know, like I was curious what you thought of that, and he was talking about this. This was a few years back, and that was kind of before, movies like Terrifier and even like A24, since they kind of came out, and there's been more. Ari Aster came on the scene, and all these other filmmakers. Um, so I was just curious, like what do you feel like it is a different time, or there's less films being made now, or I'm just curious what your thoughts of his opinion. Joe
Yeah,
Bob
well,
Briggs.
there's that's interesting because I remember on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre DVD on the audio commentary,
Hmm.
they were talking about how when they made that movie, which would have been 73,
Right.
it was way harder to make a movie. Everything was on film.
Sure.
It was like, so you had to spend more money, of course.
Insanely
It was
expensive, right?
like really hard to make a movie, but it was really easy to release your movie if you had one. If you were able to do it, you could find anyone to play it, because there were so many theaters, so many different outlets for that, and less. Like now, it's kind of switched a bit where it's there are definitely more people making movies because it's easier,
Sure.
um,
Sure.
and that because of that, it's so much harder to get your movies seen. There's a real oversaturation, and I mean, yeah, I obviously benefit from growing up when I did and being able to have access to all this stuff that people didn't. So like, it's easier for me to go make a film, and but yeah, like there's a lot of people making movies, a lot of people that have a script, and a lot of people who will are willing to spend their own money. And again, it's at a point where you don't have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to make a film. um, but yeah, because of that, like
Right.
trying to get it released, trying to get it distributed, there's a long line of other people trying to do the same thing.
So you think it's
You
just
know?
like, I've heard this discussed too, and very similar to like the the kind of the music scene, or the what's left of the the music industry, but So it's more of like there's just a lot of more people and over like just an incredible amount of people doing it,
Mm-hmm.
but the distribution part is harder.
Yeah, and
Um,
with music too, and any kind
yeah,
of art, like bands. I mean, it's a lot easier to record an album. It
hmm
still costs money to do it the right way, but
right.
it's there's a lot of bands. There's a lot of people making music, making art, which is great because that
Yeah, I
comes from an organic place
yeah.
and it's something that people like have to do to feel normal, right? But that end part where you're trying to get people to look at it or listen to it or watch it,
I've
that
seen
could
that
be.
too, where like where the case of people will say, "Oh, it's like it's oversaturated. The market's like oversaturated. There's too many people." But and then I've seen people talk about more in I guess music terms, but I guess the same for film. But I feel like I get turned on to so much. I again with like films, like I listen to a lot of older music for the most part from the '70s, and the same thing with films. But I'm always checking out and really inspired by like new music and new films that come out because I do feel, I don't know, like I kind of go back and forth, but I sometimes call it like the grandpa syndrome where, people sit on
Yeah,
their porch and they're like, well, they don't make things like they used to. And I
yeah,
think to a degree that does happen, but then there's always something that comes along that I'm like, wow, okay, this is kind of knocking out of the park, and it's new and it's fresh, and
mm-hmm.
but I rather kind of be when it comes to music, like I rather there being, I rather be in a place of where there is a lot of people making this art or creating it, and there is like maybe it is more competitive, but I rather be like to me that ultimately is more inspiring because I feel like it's like the scene and it's growing and there's more of a just a deeper appreciation. I mean, it was pretty. I'm not like particularly a huge fan of the franchise, but the whole story around it was kind of mind blowing. Like with the Terrifier films, I mean,
Yeah,
that was like that came out of nowhere, and that just like
yeah,
blew the roof off the off the place. And I don't know like what your thoughts of that because that was like uber low budget, and I think
yeah.
it's worth like an insane amount now the franchise. And there's going to be a fourth movie I think that was announced. Um,
Yeah, it's weird how that works, where it's so random too, because
right.
there are so many great movies, and like I've seen some indie stuff that like there's so many films and bands and pieces of art that are great,
Mm-hmm.
and just for whatever reason just don't didn't get the they didn't come out at the right time or didn't have the right people looking at them. Um, it's also random how that happens. And yeah, with the Terrifier stuff, like ultimately that's a good thing for the genre and for
Right.
just
Absolutely.
independent film at all. Like for something like that to happen, and then there's more demand for it. If like you can, and it's just good to see that you can make a movie for very little money, and there is that possibility of it, you know, going way beyond like what you thought it could do. So I haven't seen the Terrifier films actually.
I've only seen the
Um,
first one.
yeah.
There's four of them, so you haven't seen any of
Now
them.
for whatever reason, I'm still just like I miss those, but it's still one of those things. Like yeah, that's a movie I should probably watch.
Yeah, I
It's like
remember because I can't remember the actual year, but the first one came out a few years ago, and then I eventually saw. I kept hearing about it, like this little hearing about this rumbling, and then it was kind of this underground thing, and then it got some traction, and it just kind of grew and grew and grew, and I think by the time the second movie came out, I was like, looking occasionally. I would like look up, the box office returns for some, some of the films that were coming out at a particular season. Every now and then, I'll do that, and I was amazed to see how much money that this movie had made, and it was just like, and the movie is uh, brutal as hell. I kind of feel. I mean, just again, it's just my opinion, and a lot of time my taste is up my ass, but I kind of do feel it's more of a film of like it's shocking and the violence is great and just completely insane and it's all practical effects. I didn't really think like the atmosphere and everything. The story was really there, but I was still like, you know, like you said, like I kind of feel like it's, I would imagine, you know, independent artists, filmmakers, you know, anybody in that kind of underground circle, what have you, is like ultimately that's kind of a win or
Oh yeah.
like that's definitely a bonus, and I think that definitely, you know, helps everything. Helps like maybe, you know, open some pathways. You know.
I appreciate too that practical effects are more of a thing and seem to be somewhat making more of a
Sure.
comeback.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Um, I mean, I get it. I mean, the digital age, it's you have to kind of, especially if you're making bigger films. Like, I know, like when George Romero had his, I mean, it took him however 20 years to finally make another
Mm-hmm.
zombie film, and at that point, it was like so much of it had to be digital, just because he just couldn't. They just the studios like it costs too much money and takes too much time
Do you think
to.
that's? Do you think it's like? I mean, I know like the film technology, like it's really quick and efficient. You save a lot of money. Do you feel like when you look at that old style, you know, I think um, Tarantino still shoots on film. I think.
Oh yeah,
I think
70
Scorsese
millimeter.
does too. I
Yeah.
think. But um, do you notice a difference? Like, do you feel like things get lost now that it's digital, or do you feel it's more efficient and um, more economically sound, or just I don't know, looks better
Yeah,
for what you're doing
it's tough
as opposed to
because
film?
I mean I love that look of film,
Mm,
especially the old 16 millimeter look. Um,
right.
and one of the things that with the last couple movies we've done with Death Molester and Battle Legends, um, they're like very genre specific movies,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Sure.
And so as part of that, it was like I really wanted to look like have that old school quality, and so we did kind of try to make them have that look, that old 16 millimeter look. And we got there's a guy that created this really incredible effect that I found through YouTube, and he created this program that I was able to use. It's a real pain in the ass to edit with,
So he
and
created like a software program for
yeah,
editing.
it's like
Wow.
a
Okay.
or well, just like this look, this specific thing
Mm-hmm.
that you can drag your clips
Okay.
into, and it gives it that film look. So there's a lot of people that have those, and there's a lot of those that exist, but most of them don't look real at all. Like you can tell it's like this is digital, and they just added a few fake like scratches and dust to
Okay.
it.
It doesn't have that authentic,
But like this
nasty look.
one, really, I mean, the way that those movies ended up coming out, like it really captures that look very, very well to the point where, yeah, just that was the look that I really enjoy, and also just it just giving it that like really gritty kind of
Totally.
feel.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I would love nothing more than to shoot on 16 millimeter
Hmm.
film, but I mean, I was able to do a bit of that when I was in film school because they just, they want to teach you like
Mm-hmm.
this is how everyone did it for however many years and until digital became more of a thing. And man, it was, I can't really remember the pricing, and this would have been like in, 15, 20 years ago, but like, 400 feet of color film, which gives you 7 minutes of shooting.
That's crazy.
Buying the film is like a
And you
couple
and
hundred
it's a long.
bucks.
You literally got to manually like roll it out too. I
Well,
mean,
you
it's not.
gotta set it in. Yeah, you gotta get like a big like bag that you put the canister in, and then you take the film, and you can't see any light, so you're just doing it blindly, like putting the film in the magazine.
So
So buying the
if any,
film is really expensive. Then you got to get it developed. That's expensive. So you're talking about 400 feet of film, which is 7 minutes, would cost you, a few $100 at least, maybe even at this point pushing like $1,000. So if you're thinking about shooting, if you want to shoot a full length film on film, you're probably spending, 100 grand
For like say an
just
hour and a
for the
half.
film, you know,
Yeah, it's crazy.
versus, and there's some
Sure.
people that are purists, like, and,
Mm.
and that's why, like, I don't know if you've ever heard of Jim Van Beber.
No.
He made Deadbeat at Dawn and The Manson Family,
Hmm.
two really great movies. But he's like a old school guy. Like, I can only shoot on film. I will never shoot on digital. And he hasn't made a movie in 20 years, 30
Right.
years,
Right.
because he just can't. You just no one's gonna give you no one's gonna give you hundreds of thousands of dollars when you can save that by going digital. Like you said, the only people that really get to shoot on film anymore is like the Tarantinos.
And I think
Where
Paul
he
Paul
can
Thomas
get away
Anderson.
with it.
I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
he does
guys
too.
like that.
Because
like,
they can, because they're who they are.
yeah, and they have that pull. So
I think that's what the case of it was. But I remember, and I think it was like a kind of similar to what you're talking about, like with a digital technology that was used for film, but it was used to kind of replicate that the grindhouse, era, time period, like of that real grainy look. But I remember a few years ago now, and thinking a long time ago now, but I remember going to see Planet Terror and Death Proof.
mm-hmm.
I remember going to see those in the theater, and they had the fake trailers in between.
Yeah,
And I remember they had Eli Roth had the trailer for Thanksgiving,
right.
and I was just like blown away, by how good that looked. And I think it was digital, but it just looked so great. And then when the movie finally came out, I thought it's okay, but I was like, and I get like, and again, this is just my opinion, but I know Eli Roth, like he wanted to set out making it more of like a contemporary film, but I was like, oh man, I wish the movie looked or had that dirty feel
Yeah,
that the trailer had, because
I felt the same way.
trailer was just like so badass, and I'm like, it's like it's a time capsule, but
I felt the same way. I like seeing that and being like, they could have shot this on 16 millimeter film and blown it up and made it,
yeah,
given it that look, and shot it on like old Aeroflex, 70s cameras. Like Tarantino and Rodriguez could have easily been like,
oh yeah,
this is what we want to do, but
and that's
I don't know.
kind of feel that's what Rodriguez did with Planet Terror, because it's got that nasty kind of blown up look, the whole time, with how the actual film is, and it looks like
Yeah,
it's gonna just go out, or it's just got that grainy dirtiness to it, and this is great. But so one of the things too, like there's so many questions I have for you, because I love talking about this shit. I can do it all day, and I want to take up too much of your time,
right.
but I appreciate you coming on here. So like in my like little experience with like filmmaking, I mean, I mostly do music these days, and it's kind of what I do. But really into film, and film has always been a really deep love of mine and obsession. But like as far as working in film, like I have a little bit of experience. Like I did years and years ago. My first kind of introduction to it was I used to do these videos with a friend who was going to film school. She was going to a film college at the time, out of state, and I was in a band at the time, and we were like really influenced by like Andy Warhol and the Factory and Velvet Underground, and so we had this idea of like we would get together and make these videos, these kind of like little black and white stills and different shots, and then kind of edit them together, and then we get a bunch of footage, and then we would kind of like broadcast it, just like the Andy Warhol Velvet Underground thing, and have it projected on us while we were playing.
Oh,
And then
yeah, nice.
and that was fun to do for we did that for a couple of years, and then eventually I had this idea of like trying to become a filmmaker, and I made it was like, yeah, again, super long time ago, but I made a film, and it's just and it's a total piece of shit that probably won't ever see the light of day. But it was, and I watch a lot of movies at home that a lot of people would consider to be like just total trash, and
Yeah,
but this is like
likewise.
trash. So like legitimately. But anyway, like I did this film project and it was a little vampire movie, and I shot it with some actors and shot it in Belfast, and
What year was this?
this was like um, probably like 2000, 2010 maybe,
Okay.
around there. It was a long time ago. So we shot around town, and my goal was to like make this like really low budget kind of vampire movie. I was really into like John Cassavetes. I was really inspired by a lot of Hammer horror films, which I still am. And it was
Yeah.
all improvised. And we had we did have a premiere for it in Belfast at Aarhus, which is a gallery a long time that was around a long time ago. And again, it was a piece of shit. But the thing that I loved about the process, and it was so fucking hard to do. Like um, it was only a 25-minute film, and it was so much work. Like I couldn't believe how much work it actually was, and then doing the music, and then figuring out totally in the dark, and how to edit it and all these things, and working with another couple of different partners on the project. And but the thing that I love the most about that experience was that it just gave me like a profoundly different understanding of the art of film. And from that experience, I was like, it made me admire filmmakers more, and realizing like for me, I think when it comes to the arts, I think it's like the ultimate form of like artistic expression, because I remember seeing an interview with Ridley Scott a long time ago, and he talked about the the role of how he felt, what a director was like he was like a general in the trenches,
Right. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and the amount of like multitasking that a director has to do, and then to like actually get it done, and then so it just gave me a whole new appreciation for filmmaking and a deeper love. But then I'm like, wow, and then I also realized certain directors that I really love, why there might be these gaps of time in between, because
Yeah.
the sheer amount of work that you guys have to do. And you were like, just as we were setting up, I mean, we're in this great little studio here, but I didn't realize that you do, I mean, not only do you direct the films, but you write, and then you also edit. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty wild. And you were talking about the upcoming film festival, and it seems a lot of the other young filmmakers involved are doing all these same things. Like you guys are totally like,
Yeah. Outdoors, is that the term?
yeah,
An outdoor. Yeah. Well, that a lot of times that's just like out of necessity.
sure,
Like I have this movie I want to make. I don't really know. I don't have the money to pay an editor, or you get your buddies to come and help you out. Running the camera or holding the microphone or whatever. But like, yeah, when you're making movies on this scale, like you just have to know a little bit of everything of each process. And like we were talking a little bit about, like before we started, about editing and
mm-hmm.
how that is a very underrated aspect of the process.
Yeah, right,
A lot
right,
of filmmakers, indie filmmakers, and people like first time filmmakers too. It's like there's so much attention paid toward the writing and the shooting of the film, and then once you get to the editing, it can be a real learning curve for people. And again, like the fact that there's a lot of the equipment and the cameras are easier to access. There's a lot of editing software that's a bit more palpable and easier to understand, but still, it's just the tedium of it. Um, yeah, it
Well,
can
I'm just
be.
curious too. Like when you're, I mean, I mean, we were talking too a little bit about Robert Rodriguez, because he's like, where he's for years has been totally, self sufficient, like editing, scoring his own films, all this craziness. like in that process of where you're like directing, which I know is insane, but then like getting doing writing your own screenplays. But what did you say that one, like out of those three different hats that you're wearing, one takes significantly more time than the other, or it's all kind of equal depending on where you're trying to go with the film and what we're
Yeah,
trying to say?
that's a good question. Right. Well, writing is probably the easiest, even though it's not easy necessarily to. I mean, it's not easy at all, but it's just you and your computer or whatever. I don't know how many people use typewriters now to write, but yeah, I would say the editing is
Typewriters.
the editing is definitely it's definitely the most tedious. It's definitely the most time consuming, and like you really it's hard to get into it and step away from it and get back into it. Like that's something that I've noticed. Like I've had there, but even though I like editing, I
Mm.
actually enjoy that process. It still really takes a lot to like force yourself. Like, okay, I really have to spend like the whole day, like working on this and getting it going. And if I step away from it for too long, or like a certain amount of time goes by, it's like harder to go back to. You know?
So curious too about that, like with Death Molester, because I it's about like an hour and a half, right, or so.
Yeah, 86
So it's a pretty good
minutes.
length. So I'm curious, like, when, like, how long did that take? Because it was all shot here, right, in Maine,
Mm-hmm.
and so like when you started like actually shooting, rolling, you know, uh, you know, with the actual beginning of the film to now, or
Yeah.
to where, uh, it's to where it's at now, or maybe a few months ago. How long did the whole process take of where you were like, okay, through the editing process, and you finally like we're at a space where I'm like, okay, I can give birth to this baby kind of thing.
So, I mean, it was like a 5 month shoot.
5 month
Um,
shoot. Wow.
so like we shot it in 2024. So from like the end of May right up into October, uh, shooting on weekends and whenever we had the ability to shoot. That was a weird production as well because I was really adamant about shooting all of the exteriors and outdoor stuff when it was cloudy and overcast
Right,
to give
right.
it like more of a creepy, like dark feel to it. Sort of the idea being that like Tyler, the main character, is like a dark cloud over the whole movie.
Sure, sure.
So that
Yeah,
was
he's
like
quite the character.
scheduling wise that sucked and it was hard, but like so like yeah, 5 month shoot and then I edited through the winter. Um, and I think I had it completely done in June. So like a year, roughly, from like filming to editing, and then it played in Toronto in last July. So
Hmm.
that would have been just a little over a year
How
from
was that
like
whole experience? So it was a year ago that you had a premiere.
that was it's had an interesting history in terms of actually getting it released. Like initially we I sent it to a bunch of places and I heard back. The only one I heard back from of all places was Grindhouse Releasing, which was huge because they are really like one of the big like cult movie
Hmm.
distributors. They were one of the first companies in the U.S. to start re-releasing a lot of like 70s and 80s cult movies on DVD and VHS.
Hmm.
Sage Stallone started the company. That's Sylvester Stallone's son. He went the other way, like just going into cult stuff. And so they wanted to do it theatrically with another film that they were restoring um, called Scum of the Earth, which is a movie from the 70s and had never been really re released or updated,
Is that the Herschel Gordon Lewis movie?
Uh, It might be. I can't remember who the director of that
Because
was.
so it's like it's split. It's like a split release with the movie with Scum of the Earth and then
Death Molester.
Death
Yeah. They
Molester.
wanted to do a double feature thing, and that was how they pitched it.
Huh.
Um, and because Scum of the Earth is like kind of a backwoods like white trash horror, and
Okay.
like ours
Yep.
is as well. Ours is very like intentionally like white trash horror, and so they pushed it. They promoted it to a bunch of theaters in the U.S. and Canada, and every theater except one was like, "We'll take the one movie, but we don't want to do the double feature thing." So they took
Not
Scum of
so.
the Earth and
Oh.
not our movie. So it wasn't Grindhouse. Like they actually pushed it and tried to do that, which is it's a tough sell, getting a double feature and like a movie that no one's ever heard of. Like it's a hard thing to push, but like one theater in Toronto said yes. Um, and so that was last July, and it was really interesting the response because we couldn't go. The plane tickets were like
Oh,
$800.
so
So
it
I was like,
premiered there.
oh
So
my
you
god.
guys, you didn't, you weren't able to actually attend it.
No,
Really? Oh,
no, I would
wow.
have loved to, but $800 plane ticket. I was like, that's money we could spend on like
Right.
festival stuff.
Huh.
So
Did you have like I don't know, scouts or friends of yours there to kind of check out the scene and
yeah, so there was initially, as soon as it was over, I like wanted to hear how'd it go, and
sure.
I was like pushing Grindhouse, like I would love to, can you ask the theater,
I'd
like,
be a
was
nervous
there
wreck knowing
anybody
I
there?
couldn't
Did
be there.
anyone
Yeah.
care at all? And so the theater said, they were like, yeah, the first movie did all right, and then like a lot of people left for Death Molester because I think it was a lot for people. That was their quote. It was
A
a lot
lot
for
for
people,
people.
but there were two people who Mike knows, Mike Curtis, who goes by Mike Urchin. He plays JT Smash, and
Okay.
he was a co-producer on the film too, and he was in all the. He started the Slim Duffy show with me.
Okay.
Um, he had two friends that he met. He went to New York a few years back and worked on a trauma movie,
Oh,
Shakespeare's Shitstorm, and he met this
nice.
couple from Canada. I think they live in the Toronto area, so they went, and he asked them like, so okay, how did it go? Because we heard that it didn't go so great, and they were like, no, it was maybe a few people left because it was like late, but like there were a lot of people there and everyone was laughing and thought it was good, and I was like, okay, so we got some mixed
Mm-hmm.
reviews there. The theater said like everyone left, and then they were like, no, not everyone left, and so
Cause I like for me and my taste like of films like I have a pretty high threshold for watching violence and sexual things and just movies that push certain taboos and things. I have a pretty high tolerance for that, and like um, and I realize like some friends that I have or some people that I know that are into film, you kind of get a gist of it might not be their cup of tea kind of thing, and but I generally like people who are like open mind and not like generalize something, like especially if they haven't seen it or they kind of they're judgmental. But I remember having this one experience where a friend that was staying, it was a couple of summers ago, and they were working in town and they were kind of crashing at my house, and we would watch movies and hang out, and she was totally into watching a lot of like I'm really into my favorite label is Manga Macabre, which is like
yeah, yeah,
they're my favorite, and I really love well Severin of course and Blue Underground,
yeah.
but I buy a lot of these crazy trashy movies, and we were watching a lot of them, and I knew like certain movies would not kind of like they might be pushing a little too much for this particular person, but so you kind of I can kind of gauge that.
Yeah.
Um, but she would be open to watching all kinds of stuff and movies that were pretty extreme and pretty there were rape scenarios and they were like super gory and violent, but pretty open to a lot of these things. And I remember there was one movie I always forget it. And ever since then, it kind of made me a little bit more, I guess, to a degree, sensitive of that. But not that I was like totally insensitive. But I remember one movie. We were in a habit of doing this, watching movies together. But this one night she was over. I had said to her, "I have a friend who's going to be calling me and it's like kind of an important phone call, so I have to take this phone call." And she's like, "Oh, cool, that's fine," and I'll go and I'll watch a movie or whatever. And I had recommended this one movie to her, and that we were going to watch, and I think it's called um, probably pronouncing it wrong, but it's a German film called Hagusa, and it's a German film. And the best way I can kind of describe it, I bought it on a total whim because I looked at the artwork and like everything like that draws me in, like most people who are physical media whores like me. And I was just like enamored with it. And the best way I can kind of describe this movie is it's a German film that came out maybe, I don't know, less than 10 years ago, and it's similar to Robert Eggers' The Witch, but it's like The Witch, but it's like on acid, and it's like totally fucked up and amazing, and it's really slow. And I remember I told my friend, this is what we're gonna watch, and I started watching with her, and then I had to take my phone call, and then she was in the living room watching the movie, and I was in my bedroom on my phone talking to my friend for a while, chatting away, whatever. And suddenly I hear this
Oh, wow.
crying in the background, and I'm like, "What is that?" And I realized I walked in the room and she was crying. She like totally fucking lost it watching this movie. So I realized, like I have a high threshold for that. But the thing that I was, one of the things I was really like really, taken aback, but then also like I was really excited to see that, I mean, the film is kind of about necrophilia and it just pushes the boundaries, but it's got a lot of levity to it. There's a lot of humor. Um, and I know it definitely pushes the boundaries, but I kind of like, I kind of like that. I love that aspect of it because I feel like now, there are great films or great remakes, but I feel like, that's part of the film thing. I mean, it's like, for me, I remember getting interviewed on a podcast a long time ago, and somebody was asking me, why do you like, a lot of these like weird grindhouse movies? And I had said, well, for me, it's like putting on a really good nasty punk rock record. It's just raw. And it's
Yeah,
just coming at you.
sure.
It's pushing the envelope. And one of the things too I wanted to ask you about was like I noticed obviously there's a big Texas Chainsaw Massacre
Yeah.
influence on it, and the whole vibe, and how did you when you were you like coming up with the concept for this movie for Death Molester? Was it like, did you have characters right away that came to mind, or was it more of like like where you had the vibe, like having the Texas influence and that kind of 70s vibe as like your starting point?
Yeah, well, definitely partially that. I mean, we did. There was a short film. This movie is actually made up of two short films
Huh.
from the Slim Duffy Show era.
So it's based on one of the characters, the lead,
Yeah,
is from that
all of the
show.
characters are a good
Okay.
amount of the
Right.
characters are from the show. So we already had the characters, and they were all pretty. We did the web series for 5 years, so they were pretty well developed. Um, and in between doing the show with everybody, I went and like made these little short films. The idea being, what would it be like if the Duffy brothers made their own movie, and they had just like a shitty little
Mm-hmm.
camcorder, and they obviously they would make a movie about them being themselves being like action heroes, and or like Tyler, the cousin, who's like a total deviant. So I made the original short film was The Death Molester, and then I did another short film with Tyler called Barn of Blood. And so it was basically just combining those two movies.
Oh
And
wow.
like I
Okay.
knew I wanted to do a full length of that and have it be like you're saying, like that 70s exploitation,
Mm-hmm.
Chainsaw Massacre style, just really gross, really nasty, and you know, thinking too like there's not a whole lot of necrophilia movies out there, Like it's like the ultimate taboo, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And like, but and again, having it be like comedic was like a it was a way for us to be like, yeah, the movie's about necrophilia, but it's funny. We're you
Oh
know,
yeah, I mean you
it's
can't,
not.
you can't help but like, anybody. Again, it's like people get offended by things, pretty easily these days. But anybody who like can take it. That's one of the things I love about this style of filmmaking is like if you're gonna take it that seriously, where it's gonna push you and make you, you know, really uncomfortable, or you're gonna say that this, it goes back to the mentality of like what created the whole video nasty things of where
Mm-hmm.
it can go to the
Yeah.
point of where you're saying, well, I don't like this book, I don't like this movie, they should burn it or whatever. It can go to that extent. It's kind of dangerous ground. But I also feel like if a person gets that outraged and pissed off when it's a fictional movie, it's entertainment. When you look at the world at large, where there's like real terrors happening in the world, there's a fucked up priority there of like what is really what you actually care about, and it's like it's kind of ridiculous. But
Yeah, and there's like certain subjects where like people get more offended about and riled up about, which is
mm,
weird because it's like there's a lot of movies about murderers, like murderers and people. I mean, the amount of like serial killer documentaries that are out there now,
yeah,
and
yeah,
there's a new
yeah,
one every week.
yeah,
So like obviously there's some people are really enjoying this stuff, and
yeah,
I don't know. There's just like yeah, certain subjects when you get into like sexual stuff, it that can really like rub people the wrong way. Um, but yeah, like I'm the same way. Like I always appreciated like stuff that pushes the envelope, whether it's violence, like you know, sexual, whatever. Um, that just kind of stuff, and it's like anything that's like super over the top like that, like I mean, and that's why again, like we just kind of go the comedy route with it because you go like so over the top and ridiculous, like it just becomes funny, you
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
And like a lot of those older movies, when you watch them, as
Totally,
gross as
totally.
they are, some of them are very. I mean, you watch a movie like Irreversible, or one of
Yeah,
those
yeah,
movies, it's like okay,
yeah. That's like shocking.
this is like not funny at all, but some of those like older cult films, you can't help but just be like, this is so insane. Like, how can you not
Yeah, yeah, absolutely,
laugh at it?
absolutely. It goes. That's it kind of brings me to this one point I want to like briefly talk about. But like I one of the things that fascinates me sometimes, like I kind of had this experience just recently where um, two movies I watched that were from 1982, and I had two totally different experiences. But the first one, it wasn't intentionally the order, but I watched the original Swamp Thing, Wes
Mm-hmm.
Craven from '82, and I've always loved that movie, and it's super silly and goofy.
Yeah,
But I love everything about it because it's so '80s. But like to me, I totally believe in my own head that something can be so bad it's good. And then a couple of nights later, I watched this movie again. It was just funny. It was like the same year, 1982, by Clint Eastwood. Firefox was a movie he directed,
no, I haven't seen
and
that.
and it's the same exact year. But I was like, this movie, I could not. I couldn't. I didn't make it all the way through, um, because for me, it was dated, and it was like really serious, and it was like totally fucking unbelievable. But things were made to be so serious, and I'm like, that is interesting
Yeah,
on how and that was a big Hollywood movie at the time, and yet and then the Swamp Thing was a very low budget, early Wes Craven film, and it's interesting to me because it essentially has the same things, but then there's that little thing that separates it where it can be so terrible or so bad, it's actually makes it a wonderful experience, and then this other thing comes along of where
it's just bad.
it's just
Right,
really kind of shitty,
right.
and you're like, I'm gonna just take this out and not watch anymore. I always find that really like interesting on what like movies that would make the cut for like a mystery science theater kind of thing, or
Mm-hmm.
and then if you watch like I don't know, a bigger Hollywood movie from that time, and it clearly it doesn't age well like fine wine. It's I don't know. I always find that an interesting
It's weird with drama too, and
Yeah.
like because yeah, some of those movies and some of the bigger Hollywood movies, yeah, they don't age well, and like you're just it's that's a hard one to do and
Mm-hmm.
actually really pull off, and not be just kind of like I don't know. Some of those movies are just when they try to be like super dramatic and serious,
Mm-hmm.
and it just doesn't work. Then it's just there's nothing you can. There's no enjoy. There's no watching it and like it's so bad it's good, kind of a thing.
Right. Right.
Versus
Yeah.
like
It's a
a
real.
movie like The Room, where it's like okay, I just it's more about the story of the guy and like how he made it,
Mm-hmm.
and just like thinking that he's gonna make this really like great American drama, and just like I don't know what he was thinking. It's the it's a train wreck, but
Right.
it has that value now that like it's a comedy because it's so bad and it's so silly that
Sure. Sure.
that it's just like a movie that you get a group of people together to watch and just like laugh at and throw the
It's a
spoons at
good
the
party
screen.
movie. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
One other thing too. We're closing up on an hour here. I don't want to keep you too long, but one other thing, and I haven't gotten a chance to see this, but I definitely am going to. But it was funny. I had heard about this from a few other people, but I guess it was a few years back when you had put out the movie Battle Legends, Legend of the Battle Master,
Mm-hmm.
and you had a premiere of that in Belfast at the Colonial Theater, and
Yes.
I've heard from like two or three people. One, I think one that we're definitely like mutual friends with, and actually, now that I think of probably a few more people that night was kind of a thing of legend. Like people were laughing their ass off, and it was just like a packed house, and people
Yeah,
were just like kind of
it was
losing their
great.
shit.
It was definitely it was a it was such a great audience. Like everybody that was there, it was like got it. It was just one of those.
People's talking to the screen and like
Yeah,
reacting.
it was
Right.
just one of those things where it just worked out that we had a packed house of people that like it was their kind of movie, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a really great experience. And being able to see a movie, one of your movies with a crowd and being like, okay, that didn't work. Like that joke I thought would get like a bigger laugh, and then this thing that I didn't think would get a huge laugh did, you
Mm-hmm.
know. It's really hard to.
And I just curious too, like with, I mean, maybe it's I'm not really sure. That's why I'm asking, I guess, the question. But um, like being an independent filmmaker and then making these, kind of like more gritty, kind of envelope pushing movies. Um, do you do you have a way, or do you do like I don't know, like a form of test screening, or like do you have like test screenings for um,
Not really.
for like the Death Molester, or did you do something like that, or would you show snippets of it to get feedback from other people,
Yeah, I mean,
friends and colleagues?
yeah, a little bit of that. I mean, more than anything, it'd be like once we have a rough cut, like watching the movie together with everybody involved, and then being like, okay, what do you
Mm-hmm.
should we do this or change this, or but like, yeah, I don't do so much of that. I mean, I definitely if I like write a script, I'll definitely try to get feedback from a few people. Um, it's really funny with AI now because you can go that route too. And like, I have a new script that I recently wrote, and I like plugged it into AI and asked for feedback,
Mm,
and it'll shoot it back out to you with all these notes,
really?
and a lot of it's you got to look at it and be like, okay, yeah, I'm not gonna listen to that suggestion, but some of this stuff,
It'll
it's
shoot
like,
back and
oh,
make all these like little side notes for you.
yeah, yeah, and like add this here, do this, or like why is the character doing this? You should explain it better, and like that's actually been kind of helpful. Like, and you don't want to like write a movie using that whole AI thing in film is like super controversial topic these days, but
I'm curious, like um, what's your take? Where I mean, where do you see it going? Do you think it's could be like, you know, I mean, because I think of when controversial things happen with technology, like or along in the technological world. Like I remember auto tune first came out.
Oh God, yeah, yeah.
That was a thing where people were like,
You can't use
outraged,
that.
and that you can't use it, and that
Yeah.
it's going to replace singers, and it never really replaced
Mm.
singers.
Yeah.
And people started to use it as a tool, and then in the '80s with like when drum machines first came out, that it was going to start replacing rhythm sections and drummers for like recordings and all these kinds of things, and then that never really happened.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like AI is kind of the same thing? It's just going to be adapted as a tool, or do you feel like it could be the end of the human race?
Yeah. Well, with that, it's yeah. Terminator kind of warned us about it.
Skynet is here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I mean, it's really hard to say what the trajectory of that is going to be, but ultimately, and like with all that other stuff that you just mentioned, like I think at the end of the day, people are always going to want to see like something organic that came from another person, you know.
Sure.
So even with all the like AI, like as crazy as it's getting now, like people having like AI girlfriends and stuff like that,
Yeah,
like
AI. A coworker at work was talking about AI counselors. People
oh my
actually having
god.
counselors, which
Yeah,
just
it's like
sounds
it
pretty awesome.
sounds like holy shit. But ultimately, I don't know, like with all the other stuff you said, like drum machines and auto tuning and eventually like people for the most part do want something more organic that came from another person. You kind of we all have that like I don't think you can replace that one-on-one human thing, right? I think it's too ingrained in us to
Yeah,
want
it's
connection with other people who are
right,
real.
right.
You can do the AI thing like to a certain extent, but ultimately I just think it's like going against nature in a way. And like nature will always win
Yeah, I
more or
think.
less.
Yeah, I think there's always this thing of where there's like this full circle thing. Like things kind of always come back around, but I don't know. I kind of feel like AI's. I mean, again, it's a little bit of a different. It's a different set of circumstances, and it's interesting. Um, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I haven't had. I mean, you were talking about like script writing and using it to that capacity. I haven't used um, any. I haven't had any interaction with it. Like where the only kind of interaction I've had with AI was where I work part time at the Montessori school in Belfast, and I remember walking into this conversation or kind of overhearing this conversation with these teachers that were there, and they were talking about they had gotten there was like test week, so they got these tests returned that were completed by these kids, and there were a few kids that
Yeah.
the
See where this is going.
that they thought this was all AI, and I was like, "What AI? What?" That was the first time I really heard about it, and I remember asking them, and they're like, "Yeah, we think that this was created through some AI tech," and I was like, "What is that?" It was pretty wild, but um, so uh, again, the big thing for you coming up is the Main Underground Film Festival, April 25th, and
Mm-hmm.
congrats on that being sold out. I don't know if I mentioned
Yes.
that yet, so that's pretty exciting. It's sold out a couple weeks ago now, right?
Yeah.
Pretty early
First
on.
first annual Main Underground Film Festival. We are hoping to kind of keep it going as an annual thing. Um, I do just want to shout out the other movies, my
Yeah,
buddies
definitely.
who I started the festival with. Shane Grant, who's a filmmaker from Bangor, he is going to be premiering his movie Lick, Stick, Spit, and Swallow,
Yeah,
which is
yep,
use your imagination there.
yep, yep. It's good.
My buddy Bob Ferreira, who his film The Carnage Collection, which is like a horror anthology, and Chris Haza, who's a filmmaker from Waterville. His movie Wasterville is will be the third film playing, and then my movie The Death Molesters Barn of Blood will be playing last. And before all of those movies, we have a short film from Kyle Grogan, who's another local filmmaker. His movie Romer, which is like a a period piece, Norse kind of thing.
Really?
So yeah,
Huh.
so
Interesting.
four films made in Maine. I think part of Carnage Collection was made in New Hampshire.
Hmm.
I think that's correct, Bob. And yeah, so they're all from within, the Maine area, um, New England in general, and it's one of those things where there isn't. It's something that we didn't really see that existed around here. Like there's the Maine International Film Festival. There's Camden International Film Festival. There's a few film festivals in Maine, none of which would ever play our movies. So it was like just kind of a thing, an inevitable. Like we should. There's no underground film festival in Maine, really. Um, there's Damnation Land, which that's kind of more underground, I think. But like, there wasn't a
That's another
main.
main film festival,
Yeah,
Damnation.
they do. That's in Portland, I
Huh.
believe. But there wasn't a main underground film festival, and like every other
Interesting.
state
That's
has an
surprising.
underground film festival, and it's Muff. So we were like, it doesn't get any better than that.
Because there's, I
So
mean, I think, like where we live here, mid coast, like there's some great theaters, and I'm amazed by like the amount of variety of theaters. But like, I mean, we got the Colonial, the Strand Theater, and then there's like the main film center.
yeah,
I have a couple of friends. Got to give a shout out to Buffy and Sam, who run the Waldorf After Dark at Waldeboro, which is a really great series. So there's a lot of good, things, and that's like that. The Waldorf After Dark kind of definitely uh, has, you know, more of that kind of grindhouse or exploitation kind of vibe, and 80s B movies and things like that. So there's like a pretty cool variety. But yeah, no, that's it's good to see that that you can that there's a scene for this, and I know we were talking about before. Like I think not there. I think there's a lot of I think a lot of the times the corporations, companies, bigger studios like underestimate what people want, and I think people do want new things, new ideas. I don't think they're all, mindless monkeys throwing shit at each other. I mean, there are people who do want the same thing and want to be comfortable,
yeah,
but I do feel like there are people that want things that are going to be a little challenging and just fun and exciting and different and just unique, and not already some kind of established IP.
yeah,
So, and I
definitely.
think that is a thing that gets underestimated about, and I've gotten into some debates about people who, a few YouTube folks out there that one or two in particular. I usually don't get into like debates or confrontations with people, but a couple of times it's happened where they insist that like people want the same thing over and over again, and that everybody's an idiot, and that people now whenever they go to the theater they can never put their phone away, and that they want to buy the same or see or experience the same ideas over and over again. And I don't think that's true, but I like this kind of thing happening now with especially with this festival in your film. It's like no, it's like it's great because it is counterculture. It's unique and it's different, and um, it's got an edge, but it's fun. And finishing up here, I'm going to take up all your time here. It's like an hour and 10 minutes here, but if you wanted to close out or talk about any current or new projects that you're working on now, if you feel inclined to.
Yeah, well, Death Molesters, Barn of Blood.
So it's on
You can
Blu-ray
see
now.
that
It's
at the
amazing.
I made up a handful of these for the festival, which were sold out, but
Battle Legends has been available
Battle
on
Legends is
Blu-ray.
also on Blu-ray from SRS Cinema. You can get that at srscinemastore.com, and it's streaming as well on VOD.
Is it 4K thing too? Or are you getting?
Um, no, no, we're not. There's
Oh,
no reason for the 4K with our movies. Um, yeah,
yeah,
and
that's great.
I will hopefully. I'm planning to be shooting another film this summer.
Hmm.
Um, I kind of I kind of want to keep the details of that
Sure.
somewhat close. I always feel like I'm gonna jinx it whenever I start talking about
Absolutely. Yep.
like when I'm making we made these last two movies, we really didn't like say much about them until they were done. Because I just always think like I'm gonna tell people about it, and then something horrible happens.
Bottom's gonna drop out. Yep. Yeah. Totally.
So,
Totally get that.
so yeah, there's stuff in the works, and Death Molester. I mean, we're still working on trying to get some actual distribution. It will be available after the festival. It'll be available on Troma now, which is Troma's app. I think it's like $5 a month. And
That's
you can
great.
watch all the Troma movies on it and a bunch of other independent films, and including that one. So
You think Lloyd Kaufman has actually seen Death Molester yet?
I hope he has.
I'm sure he would
I mean,
approve. I'm sure he would approve
they
of
accepted it, so I certainly hope he. And he did a little shout out video for us as well.
Really?
For the festival, and it's funny because now that it's sold out, we're like we have all these shout out videos, and we're like, I mean, I guess we can post them, but hey, check out you can't get tickets, but check out this shout out video. So we'll be putting some of that stuff up leading up to the festival anyway, just because we do plan on this being an annual thing. So
That's great.
it's good for branding.
Yeah,
Anyway.
that's just. And it's in a Brunswick's a great little town. It's like in between Midcoast and Portland. It's a cool. There's a lot of cool little. I don't know, like kind of a nightlife there. There's a lot of young people that live there, and
Yeah, college.
So it's great. Yeah, well, thanks again, Matt. This has been a super blast.
Of course, appreciate it.
And yeah, I always love. Again, I've always, I like I said in the top of the show, like I really feel like filmmaking is like the ultimate form of expression because, you have to, you have to worry about just directing and then the cinematography, film, the editing, scoring the film, and distribution. It's an amazing art form, and these kinds of things, these kinds of developments, realize that like you realize with all the craziness in the world where, one week people are saying, the theater experience is, maybe going to be going away at some point, or the physical media has this thing of where it goes up and down, and there's always going to be these shifts and changes, but I don't think the experience of seeing a movie or making a movie is ever going to go away because I feel like it's just part of who we are as people, and it's the greatest art form. So thanks again, Matt. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Also, just want to give a quick shout out to our composer. You mentioned the composing, Mark Fox, who did our movie. He's doing Wasterville. He's doing Shane Grant's movie. So 3 of the movies at Maine Underground Festival are the same guy. He's a British composer. He did a score for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Shocking Truth, which is a documentary about the making of the original movie. So
that's a really great documentary.
And he was awesome to work with. I'm definitely wanting to do more with him. So yeah, it's the Mark Fox Festival, kind of. He's like got his hand in almost all of the movies. So yeah.
Did you, not to go off on another rant, but did you hear that they were, I guess, what is it? Is it A24? I just saw it recently. A24
Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah,
thing.
like they're gonna make it maybe a series, and then there's a Friday 13th series.
Right. I mean,
kind of crazy.
They do really good stuff, so hopefully they reinvent it in a way that's not, kind of just dragging it along as this the series. Those two have been dragged along, just kind of like. But well, I think they put out great movies. So.
Well, thanks again, Matt. Super fun. Really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Good luck with the festival and all these new and other all these exciting projects. And I'll put the links up for because you have a YouTube channel and some other things, and I'll put all the links and all that good stuff online. So
awesome.
Thanks again, everyone. Peace.